Hi all, Andy Lynn here. I wanted to jump on and put this video together, and I want to talk about some very sensitive and vulnerable topics. So full disclosure, this is going to be a very vulnerable video from me. As some of you know that I, as a professional, an advocate, am learning. I'm always learning, and part of the reason that I do what I do is because we made just a number of mistakes in our journey with mold, and I try really hard in my work to be very transparent about that, be very vulnerable, and attempt to keep people from making these same mistakes. So, and as so many of you know, you have to be realistic when dealing with environmental illness, as they are incredibly financially draining, and will very quickly exhaust your resources, which will put you in a tough situation like we're in. So full disclosure, I don't know everything. I'm still learning, and I want to continue to be transparent and honest and candid in my journeys, because I think that sometimes with some of these illnesses and these things that we go through, you really can't understand the impact that they have, and the suffering that they cause unless you've been through it. And if you are somebody that suffers the way that I do, then you understand that. So the topic I want to talk today about is neuroimmunology. Okay, so but pertaining to biotoxin exposure. So mycotoxins absolutely affect people neurologically, and a lot of people are starting to make those connections, like Dr. Dale Bredesen with Apollo Health, who is amazing, and I've been following his work for some time and reading his books after my own experiences with some, pre-dementia symptoms at a young age. But he has connected Alzheimer's and dementia patients with mycotoxins, and so he's made that connection. And there's been a lot of research, but it doesn't seem like this research is getting translated into allopathic medicine. So mycotoxins, for folks that don't know, are secondary metabolites of certain molds. So molds are characterized by water activity needed to grow on building material. Mold is ubiquitous in nature. We would not be here without it. It's an important part of our ecosystem. And being ironically a mycology enthusiast, fungi is incredible. It's really, really incredible. And mold plays a really important part in our world. However, mold that grows on building material in a very unnatural habitat, like in our home, it can become problematic. So molds that are belonging to genera is looked at as water indicator molds. Some of these molds have the capacity to form the secondary metabolite. So the best way I can explain a secondary metabolite versus like a primary metabolite is, like, primary metabolites are molecules or things produced through life-sustaining processes of an organism. So secondary metabolites are metabolites rendered from processes that are not necessary to sustain life. So when you hear that term secondary metabolite, that's what it means. So mycotoxins are very, very small chemicals. They're very, very, very small molecules, and some of these toxigenic molds will produce these things. And because they're very small, they can really get into our system. So our lungs, when you look at particulate matter, and so that's and you're looking at very, very small particulate matter. The smaller that the particulate matter is, the deeper it can get in our lungs. And mycotoxins, because they're so small, have the ability to reach our alveoli, and that is where your lungs exchange gas with your blood. So that's how mycotoxins can enter our bloodstream. And because they do that, they can cause systematic damage. Mycotoxins are also known to cross the blood-brain barrier, specifically trichothecenes, which is the mycotoxin rendered by Stachybotrys, which is the black mold, if you've heard that term. It is its point of action is presynaptic. So a lot of really interesting research on trichothecenes. And side interesting note, trichothecenes, the secondary metabolite produced by Stachybotrys, is used in biowarfare. So they actually put this on warheads. And at first I was like, no way, no way that's true. But I actually bought the government textbook on biowarfare, and sure enough, trichothecenes is in there. So, and the reason they use it is because they know that it affects people immediately. So, I'm very hypersensitive. A lot of people say, well, how do you know you're in mold? And it's really hard to explain. And the first couple years that I was dealing with it, I'm like, there's no way that this is real. It's just very weird, but it's been years and I haven't been wrong yet. So when I'm in mold, my ears will start to ring. I will become spacey. I'll have a hard time following conversations. I kind of feel like I'm dreaming. It's kind of like depersonalizing. I will get very agitated. I'll get sensitive to sound and noises, and get feeling very crabby, very agitated. And I don't know, I'm still learning, but there are definitely situations that mold exposure causes suicide ideation. And because I do what I do and I talk to so many people, I know that this is not so rare. A lot of people comment the same things. And recently this week, I've been reading a lot about that. And I guess that is something that some folks are studying. And so, and that's what I want to talk about specifically today. And I found, there's a Dr. Mary Ackerley. I've been reading her work, and she has this saying called black mold, black thoughts. And I just want to read this to you from this letter that she wrote. It was an inquiry into biotoxin related illnesses in Australia. And in the document, she says, I've talked before about how people can walk into water damaged buildings and really very quickly start to feel suicidal. And they were feeling fine beforehand. I call it black mold, black thoughts, and it can reverse as quickly as turning around and getting out of the building. That's crazy, right? I'm telling you, as somebody that loves their life, I have a great husband. I love life. I'm also, a woman of faith. That's how I feel. So when I have mold exposures, that is a very real side effect. It's something that I speak openly with, to my husband about. And I've come such a long way in my healing. So some of we've been remediating our house again, and we are in the middle of, we're at the tail end of it, thank God, a really, really large exploratory remediation. So we did some mycotoxin air testing because nothing else picked up on this issue except this mycotoxin air test, and it identified high numbers of trichothecenes, aflatoxin, and ochratoxin A in my bedroom where I was feeling symptomatic. So our exploratory remediation has involved residing the house, and sure enough, we found mold behind the siding near my bedroom, nowhere else. And then once the siding was off, we ascertained that windows on that side of the house, so one in my bathroom connected to the bedroom and my bedroom, were installed wrong, and moldy and rotten. And so, we found the mold. So we demoed, my husband demoed the both energy walls in our bedroom, and then the entire master bathroom, where we weren't playing around. And I'm glad that we did, because we found it. I mean, we found the mold that nothing else picked up on. So again, going back to my past videos, there's a time and a place for those big heavy hitting testing methodologies, and also a time and a place for exploratory remediation. So I always, as an advocate and an educator, I always tell people, do not do your own remediation, period. Don't do it, especially if you have a hypersensitivity. We are out of money. So, residing the house was insanely expensive. We took out a second mortgage, so we resided the house. Then we had to replace windows that we weren't anticipating. We put up gutters. So hiring a remediation crew to come in and do this demo just was not in our cards. However, I work for a great local company. That's my daytime gig. And we were, we have access to the equipment. So my husband's a wonderful remediator. So he set meticulous containment. We got it under negative air pressure. And he has done just a great job. However, because it's just him doing it, this project, which should have been like a 1 to 2 day project, I'm talking the interior, not the siding, it should have been knocked out in 1 to 2 days. It's taken weeks, because he works a full-time job and we're parents and we've got kids, and it's just him doing it. And I have been affected. So my health has continued to decline. When they started doing the siding, I became really symptomatic. And then when my husband started doing the demo, and again, we're under containment, but we can't just leave the house, and that's very real. We don't have anywhere to go. We have a family, and it's really easy to be like, oh, you have to leave, you have to go, you have to do it this way. And I tell people that, right? I tell people, don't do your own remediation. You shouldn't be in the house. But what do you do? What do you do when there's nowhere to go and there's no money? So, anyways, my health has continued to decline, and I am experiencing extreme nerve pain. So it's for me, it's into my shoulders, it's radiated down to my elbows and into my wrists and hands. I have not slept a full night in months. It's extremely painful. Some days, today's pretty good. Some days very, very unmanageable. It's truly affecting my quality of life, and I don't do well on no sleep. And then I'm starting to lose function in my hands. So this last weekend, I wasn't able to do anything. I couldn't have held a pen. I couldn't open the milk. And so that's been profound. But this last weekend, when my husband was working on our house, I went into a state of psychosis. And so where I experienced suicide ideation. And usually we're really aware of it. So I'll have a mold exposure, so I'll travel somewhere and there was mold there. And I think about suicide. It's really bizarre. And I'm being open about it because I think it's interesting. And I like to be a third party observer. But also I'm an educator and an advocate. So I'm trying to be very transparent. But also I think that you really don't understand how profound and real it is unless you've been through it. So if I can bring awareness to these topics by being vulnerable and embarrassing the heck out of myself, then that's what I'm going to do. So usually I'm really aware of it, and I have a really wonderful husband. He's very loving, he's very patient, he's very gentle, he's very kind. And he gives me so much grace. So usually we'll talk about it, and I'm not in any danger. I'm just like, well, I had a mold exposure. I'm just having these icky, weird thoughts. But I have all these things in my toolbox. I do, I practice neuroplasticity, brain, limbic system rewiring. I have a great support system. I have just a number of, I work with a number of doctors in my professional life. I have great friends. I'm surrounded by so many resources and so many great people. But anyways, I went into like a state of psychosis, and I was dead set on taking my life. And so I made an attempt. And luckily, it was outside. I went to a park, and, and for me that helps, getting outside and like getting fresh air. So it's probably good that I went there, but obviously it was unsuccessful because I'm here, and thank God. And I'm out of it now. And the best way I can describe it is that when I come out of these states, it's almost like, and mind you, I was not drinking. I did not drink alcohol this weekend at all. But it's like when you come out of it, for me, it's like I had too much to drink the night before, and you make an ass of yourself, and then you're sobering up. You're like, oh my gosh, I have people to call. I have to apologize. It feels like that. And that happened a few years ago when we were first in this, and we were learning, and I love neuroscience. So we were learning about these things. And one day I said to my husband, I said, I want you to take the kids, take the kids out of here. I'm done. I'm going to take my life, and I'm done. And I was serious, and he physically picked me up, put me in the truck, the kids, the dogs, and we went to his parents' house and stayed the night there. And just a few hours later, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Again, it's almost like sobering up, and it's something that you cannot truly understand and appreciate unless you've been through it. So that's what happened this weekend, but it, you can know all of the things and it kind of sneaks up on you. It's kind of like, I call it mold amnesia. And, when I got interviewed on Dr. Jill Carnahan's podcast, she said the same thing. And somebody that is so smart and such a incredible woman, having her say that as well really validates me. And I hope that more people come out and talk about these things. I don't want to end my life, and I love life, and I love baking, and I love my husband and my kids, and I love everything about life. But that's what mold does to me. And I think it's terribly interesting. I mean, on a side note, and I love fungi. I'm a mycology enthusiast, and I was long before I did all of this. But it's interesting to me because what does mold do in nature? It's a decomposer, right? And so the fact that mycotoxins cause the suicide ideation in people is really interesting, right? Because it's like it wants to decompose your body, so it wants you to die, which I think is terribly interesting. But the reason I wanted to make this video is, I'm so blessed. I was picked up by a deputy this weekend, and it was just a wonderful man, somebody that's in my community. His kids go to school with my kids, and then somebody from the county reached out to me this week just to check in, and they were so wonderful. And I'm so grateful that there's people like that in our community, because I've lost so many friends to suicide. Somebody in my community, somebody that was referred to me on a personal level that became a friend and a fellow Lyme and mold sufferer. She's, her family's burying her today. She took her life last week, and I had no idea she was struggling like she did. So we need to be talking about these things. But, here's the obstacle, you guys, is that these mental health issues, they're caused by inflammation. So that's what mycotoxins do. They cross our blood-brain barrier and they cause inflammation in our brains. And we know this. It's studied, it's documented. I promise you guys, the studies are out there. I have a number of studies on my desk right now. And the problem with getting resources with a psychologist or these mental health providers is that if they don't understand the mechanism, they can't treat it. So for me, and this is just me personally, I'm not a doctor, I'm not an expert, but SSRIs for me did the total opposite. So I was put on an SSRI when we were living in mold, had no idea we were living in mold, and I was experiencing just unchecked anxiety. That was just not typical of me, not normal. And my doctor prescribed an SSRI, and within 2 days of taking it, I started thinking about ending my life. But I was really aware of it. I was like, this is weird. So I called my mother-in-law, who's a psychologist, and I said, I'm not in any danger, but I'm feeling this way. And she's like, oh my gosh, stop taking that medication immediately. And I did. And by the time it was out of my system, I just went back to being anxious, rather than wanting to end my life. So for there to be resources for people like me and so many of the people that are affected by these illnesses, you have to know the mechanism. And neuroimmunology it's a growing field, but there's still that disconnect from educating, providers of these things. And if you know of a psychologist that is knowledgeable in biotoxin illness, please comment below so that others can see this. I've been following the work of Dr. Mary Ackerley, and man, she's incredible. So she wrote, I found this article by her. She wrote this article called Brain on Fire. And she, it's this paradigm change. It's a blog about, ME, CFS, SIRS, and other mold related illnesses. And it speaks to me. And I was really, really pleased to see all the things that she recommends for brain health and mental health are all the things that I've been doing. So that's so it's great. The deputy was like, oh, we've got all these resources. I'm like, that's great, but they can't really help me. And I'm not just being dramatic. I really mean it. So I'm going to continue looking into that. Another book that I found, and I haven't read this yet, but I actually found it at Five Below, and it was just like, ooh, I need to have that. It's called The Inflamed Mind. And it doesn't talk, and I haven't read it cover to cover yet, but as far as I picked through it, it has not mentioned mold or biotoxins, but it's just talking about inflammation in general. And that And so it's the inflamed mind, a radical approach, a new radical approach to depression. So it is talking about how inflammation affects mental illness. And so, and to treat and help people like me, you have to look at inflammation. So, and it's crazy to me. It's crazy to me that, like, shouldn't we be doing that, right? Because if you don't know the mechanism of the illness, then how are you going to treat it? You know, how are you going to put together a treatment protocol? So, I am okay now. It was a scary weekend. It was icky. And then it was kind of like throwing gasoline on fire because, you know, my husband and I are at each other's throats because we're out of money and we're stressed out. And I think, you know, again, he's been wearing a respirator, but you can't have a beard when you wear a respirator. And my husband has the most beautiful beard in the world. And I love it. I love it. But I told him, I said, babe, if you're going to remediate, you have to shave your face. He's like, absolutely not, blah, 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 blah. And his whole personality changed this weekend. And my husband has offered me so much grace. I have an incredible husband. And he was, you know, he was not a very nice person for some moments this weekend. And we believe, I mean, we truly believe it was because of what we were doing in the house, because both of us just went, and you see that. I mean, if you start reading a lot, you'll see that there's high incidences of suicide, homicide, and domestic abuse in water damaged buildings. And it's something that we need to look at. Social workers, mental health providers, I mean, everybody, right? Everybody has to start looking at these factors. Water damaged buildings do not just render mold. It's you know, metabolites of mold and gram-negative bacteria and endotoxins and all these other things. And the crappy part is all these things work synergistically together to create these more toxic products. And so it's a big issue, and one that I hope that we can continue talking about, because there has to be resources for folks like this. And if I can, in my moment of weakness, and I'm embarrassed. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. I'm embarrassed. But if I can't be transparent and vulnerable, and if I'm going to share with people my journey, then I need to share all of it. And there just needs to be better resources, but we need to bring awareness to those things first. We need to bring awareness, and then we need more research. And then we have to take that research and we have to be teaching these psychologists and these mental health providers and these doctors. So there's a lot of work to do, but you have to start somewhere. And so we're starting by bringing awareness. So if you are struggling and you are thinking about leaving this world, please reach out. Please reach out to me personally. There will be no judgment. I will, I get it. I mean, look at me. I'm telling everybody my deepest, darkest secrets. So please don't leave this world. Somebody in my community, in the Lyme and mold community, their family's burying her today, and they're devastated. And she was such a light in this world. So let's change things, right? So let's start talking about them. So please reach out. Please seek help if you are feeling this way. And I'm telling you, man, a day makes such a difference sometimes. And for me, it's not how I felt. I don't feel that way. It's weird. I don't know how else to explain it. So please reach out, and thanks for listening to my story and letting me be vulnerable in my moment. So take care of yourselves.